Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Yash Tekriwal with us today. He is Gen AI Community and Education at Clay. He's founded a couple of startups. Interesting guy altogether. Has done an executive MBA, I would guess, at Alt MBA. Was the co-founder and CEO at Lectureless. He's kind of a nerd and a techie and a sales guy at the same time. It's a very interesting combination. Very young as well. He's into many things. So eager to explore a couple of clays with him today. Clay.com is this amazing tool people use for mostly GTM and AI outbound purposes. It is the best in its kind right now. It's like a spreadsheet that people can connect with apps like ChatGPT and Claude and can customize their outreach messages at scale. So in a spreadsheet, right? So it's super amazing. They have a very cool feature with Clayagents that allows it's kind of their own ChatGPT if you want that allows you to uh, use templates and do stuff. For example, reaching out to this company, mentioning who is their ICP, right? Stuff that you would never be able to do with other tools such as Apollo and so forth. So we'll dive into it. I'm sort of blabbering here. This podcast is brought to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to scale a podcast and monetize a podcast, go to spotbuyer.com and Qualia here, this little nootropic that helps me stay focused, keeps the drive in me and helps my memory as a busy entrepreneur. Crunching 16-hour days certainly helps. You can go to neurohacker.com. I'm taking Qualia, the caffeinated version. Yash, welcome to the pods. Tell me a bit more about yourself, what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, excited to be here. Excited to jam with you live. Um, so I'm Yash. I have done a lot of things at Clay. I've started the GTM org, ran a lot of our data and systems before we brought other people onto that, been spread across the customer division. But my main focus these days is shifting towards how do we get more and more people excited about actually using Clay? Because I think the number one thing I hear from people all over LinkedIn and all over the internet is that they jump into Clay, they see people who have built videos with Clay, they think it's really cool. And then when they jump in themselves, they're intimidated or lost. They don't know where to start. They're not sure how to get what they want to do. They try for a little bit, fail, and then get discouraged. So that's a lot of my main focus today is easing some of that initial user journey for people and helping them get better alongside us.
Right. And how would you describe yourself as a human being? Like you've started a bunch of startups. What are your core skills and who are you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe an existential one for me. I clearly like doing a lot of things. I've worn lots of hats in my career. I've been a high school science or computer science and philosophy teacher, all the way to an executive coach on like the MBA slash VP level at large companies. I think the like defining thread of a lot of my career so far is that I really just like solving interesting and important problems. So those problems take different shapes and forms in different parts of my life. It's been education and learning at some points. It's been how do you automate redundant work to free up people for more creative work? It's been how do you help people become the best versions of themselves in fast paced, rapid environments? And I think part of what I love about what I get to do at Clay today is I get to flex skills from all the different walks of life that I've had in the past in one company, which feels a lot more fun. You know, from talking to people at the team, trying to grow different parts of the team, building the education part, the go to market side, the data side. It's been a fun journey. Yeah.
And how did you find out about Clay?
Great question. I'm going to have to give this credit to our head of ops, Varun. He is a friend and I think had just discovered Clay as he was a student in one of my courses when I was running an education business years ago. And then he sort of recognized that a lot of the systems and tools were things that I had probably built behind the scenes. He reached out. He was like, Yash, we should talk in a very Varun way. We talked for a bit. He was leaving the company he was at, Newfront. He had been advising Clay at the time. He asked me what I thought of the tool. And I think this was 3 years ago now. At that time, I said, it seems good, but it's not as good as some of the stuff I'd built personally. I'd made my own system in like Airtable, Phantom Buster, Notion, etc. And then I met Kareem, who's the founder, gave him a bunch of feedback on what it would take for me to start using that tool over what I had built as my own system. And then they have improved rapidly from there, right? Like I think they implemented all my feedback. They've built a ton more functionality and features. And then I think a year and a half ago now, I took the leap and decided to join the team full time because I loved what they were building so much.
And why are you bullish on Clay?
Great question. I think there's a couple of reasons I'm bullish on Clay. I think one is that it is it's a hard product to replicate, right? There actually have been a number of Clay copycats that have come out in the last year or so. And I actually think in a lot of ways, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. And so seeing a lot of other big products or companies start to copy our UI and our layout, to me is just a sign of like we're doing the right thing and we're moving the right direction. And I also think not necessarily a worry because we're moving in like different advanced directions every time. I think like finding your way into the problem that we solve for, which is helping enable go to market for organizations across the world, is pretty hard because you have to build all the partnerships, all the connections, all the tools, the insights, the processes, the workflows on how do people and go to market teams actually solve for all these issues. And then the other reason I'm bullish on it is really just the people and the attitude and like the vibe, for lack of a better word. I think we care a lot deeply about making people happy and making people excited about using the tool. And that's not just lip service, right? It's like in the way that we think about how we talk to people, sending them little moments of joy that make it a delightful experience. I'm really bullish more than even the product and the vision on the people here in the company. It's like the best team I've ever worked with in my life.
Yeah, it's a great team. It's a great product. Many features being deployed almost on a daily basis. Pretty crazy. Um, Now, Clay itself, who's the ICP of Clay, and how do you guys actually get in touch with them?
Yeah, it's another good question. It's a tricky question because our ICP is actually people on the revenue operations or the sales operations or sometimes the marketing operations parts of teams. But a lot of the people who are impacted by the work that Clay does are actual BDRs, SDRs, AEs. It's this tricky double-edged sword of we are automating that 60 to 70% of data work that BDRs are constantly spending doing manually. But we don't want them to be the ones automating it. We want 1 to 3 people on the RevOps, Sales Ops, or MarOps team automating the thousands of manual hours of data work that the sales team is doing. And so there's like this double value prop here where the actual user of our tool is not necessarily the end beneficiary, but it's a natural enough org structure that we often get in touch with those people, to your question, through a lot of the really wonderful viral content that people will post about us online because they feel a connection and an ownership to what they're doing, through the inbound forms that we have on the website, and then also through like a host of different automated outbound activities that we have running, of course, powered by Clay and by the tool that we use.
Right. Now, tell me about some fascinating tables, Clay tables you have going on in terms of outreach, stuff that we couldn't do normally with some classic Apollo campaigns. Let's say I described the ICP one, the Claybot. I've seen some event stuff, which is fascinating. Like, hey, your company is being organizing this event or is going at this event. I've also seen the podcast, which is quite cool. You've been on X podcast. I mean, this is exactly like what modern outreach agencies and outbound teams need. If you want to share like what you have that's been catching your attention on Clay via your screen that is, and verbally tell us what they're about, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe I'll share 1 or 2 tables that I think come to mind. Then we
Right.
can jump into anything else that might
Yeah.
be relevant for a live build or something else. So number one, I will share first the table that we have started to use on almost all of our calls and demos with enterprise customers. Because like I was mentioning, I think there's lots of people talking about all the cool things you can do in Clay, but then you get into Clay and it's still like hard to understand what the core value prop is, where to start yourself. So what I often do is, what's the name of your company, Charles? Do you call it Cormier
Top
Coaching?
leads dot agency.
upleads.agency.
Yeah. Top leads with TOP,
Top
right?
leads. That makes more sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
top leads.
So let's check this real
Upleads.agency
quick.
is the first time I see that one.
This is
There's
not
also
you, I'm guessing.
podfire.com. I have a bunch. You decide.
Yeah, so let's do this. Whatever your most recent one is, let's do Podfire. So I'm going to come into this table, and I use this table for everyone new to Clay. And I think it's a perfect example showing all of the best parts of Clay in one very quickly. What I do in this table is when I hop on a call with somebody, I literally just put their name in here. So like, let's do you as an example. And then let's do Podpire since that's your most recent company on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All I have to do is input those two things. Right now, I'm doing it manually. You can imagine I would get someone's name and company automatically from all sorts of places on the web. And it does a couple of things. First, we're using the AI web scraper here with a very simple prompt just to try and go find your LinkedIn profile. We're making sure it matches a specific pattern. We're making sure that the company matches so that we don't get the wrong person, which sometimes used to happen. And then we return the profile URL to kick off the rest of this table enrichment. Once we get your profile, we're going to scrape it on LinkedIn to try and find all sorts of different things we could personalize it to. We could use your awards, your education, your past job experiences, think about your volunteering, look at any certifications you might have, recommendations. Looks like we did find you, at least as a person, so we got the right profile. And then there's a couple of other things we want to do. You probably want to find your email, which it sounds like we just did a version of right there. Maybe it's validated. There we go. Once it flows in, we're checking 5 to 6 different providers here to try and get that email with maximum coverage and minimum cost. And also, it's hidden here, but we're doing a validation step in between every single one of those runs. I don't know, for people who have done manual prospecting in the past, just remembering how time consuming these steps used to take alone for this email part is incredulous. Because if you have 3 or 4 different providers, you're uploading and downloading data as a CSV between all of them. You still have to send your data once you get it back from the data provider to some sort of validation provider. And that's before you even get to start doing research. That's just for the right to be able to reach out to somebody. So that's this part right here on the email waterfall. And then we find a bunch of account level information. I can go find the most recent company they've worked at. I can scrape that from LinkedIn. I can get the total employee count, the size of the sales team, if that's the most relevant thing to us on most of these calls. And then my personal favorite part of Clay is if I know how I want to be writing the message I want to send, I can reverse engineer my way into having AI prompt and help me write it. So let's say I'm writing a message to somebody on LinkedIn right after I've hopped on a call with them, saying something to the effect of like, hey, Charles, it was so good meeting you today. I love the focus of Podpire and helping enable more podcasts across the world. I'm excited to help you use Clay to reach more podcasts and influencers across the world. That's like the kind of thing that makes sense given the conversation we've had, because Clay helps people reach more of their audience. And I want to take the time to show that I understood what you do as a business. I'm doing that here by scraping the website, and it looks like missing from enrich company description because you don't have a company description on LinkedIn. So I can just edit that here, make this optional, and then
You
resave.
feel the company mission's a good intro because I do that on Apollo as well with their quote unquote AI. And I think everyone is doing that nowadays.
I think it's less about is this a good intro or is it not? And it's more about is it relevant? Is it contextual? Right? So, for example, here, let's look at the actual final message that I'm getting, and that'll hopefully help us. Let's do this and include description, and we'll do body, make description optional, save, do not run. So what I'm doing here is just making the company description optional because I think you don't have one on LinkedIn for Podpire. But I've just created AI snippets, right? I can use these AI snippets to summarize all sorts of things. The message that's now been created is this one, right? Like you will now get, you probably have already gotten some form of a LinkedIn message from me that says this exact thing. And I think what's most powerful about this is really great if I've hopped on a call with you, because now you've seen it, and it feels like the right context. And I've also shown you this table. This is less great if I haven't hopped on a call with you, right? It's about the context and the relevance of what makes your messaging really powerful to people. So if I haven't talked to you before, maybe my cold outbound would not be on just your company mission or something else. Maybe it would be a little bit more in depth, which is where I'll show you like a second email example table. This is just one for people who are completely cold. They're people that have visited your website. You can hook it up to RB2B if you want and show you how it works. So we do a couple of things. We actually still do the company mission here, but that's not enough. We add a bunch of other things. So we also look for the ICP, very similar thing to what you saw in the message before. But I think also more importantly, we try and look to see some serious companies and customers that they've already used that we can mention in that message. And then we also try and figure out this some logos piece here. And then what we end up with as final copy in this whole message is something like, hey, first name, seems like your company does this. Also mention some pretty big logos. If I come to a message where that's filled in. So in this case, instead of big logos, we have Shopify and Peloton. Pretty rad, right? When you're doing, and this is like where the templated part of your message really does matter. Here's why I'm reaching out. I'm guessing that when you sell to large companies, if you knew exactly who was on your website, your life would be a lot easier, right? Everyone feels that. But here's the other things that you probably don't know. You can't guess the site. You can't guess the LinkedIn. If that resonates, right? If I'm getting even some of the right details here, let's talk for a little bit about how you can replicate some sort of a wizardry flow. Because again, the point of this email is to show enough personalization from just a website visit. That's the most impressive thing. That like, I just got this from you looking at my website and I sent it to you instantly. That's the other piece that really matters here is the timing. If I sent this to you out of the blue and there was no context on it, it's a little bit different. So I think the other thing you have to think about with personalization when you're making these campaign strategies is also the timing, the relevancy, and the context of how you're reaching out. Because if you can reach out at the right moment, the moment solves for 50% of your personalization issues.
That's a great email. I really much like it. And are you also okay? So yeah, this one's for Stripe. Are you mentioning like Peloton as their clients in there?
Yeah, exactly. Like it
Okay,
seems like
at the
Stripe is
start,
focused.
straight up. Huh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, this one's a bit more complex. Sometimes do you have like very short ones that have lesser chance of getting in the spam? What have you noticed is working the best generally as a quick intro that prompts the other person to reply?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think like, short to medium ones tend to be the campaigns we run with the most here. Because you're making a trade-off, right? The shorter your message, the more likely it is that someone might read the full thing. Also, the less space you have to show them that you've personalized and done the work. So I think we try to keep emails less than 100 to 150 words, which is best practice across the industry. Like this would still fall in that range. I think it's probably 120. But I would also say just as important as keeping it within that maximum length is not sending an email that's only 30 words, right? Every email should have the like following framework and component. It's like, hi, first name, insert reason for reaching out or reason for finding your information. Maybe you read a podcast, a blog, an article, you saw them on LinkedIn, you liked their post. Has to be relevant. Then mention some sort of like a call to action. It can be at the end. I like putting in the second action. Most of the time, the call to action on these types of emails is, are you willing to have a conversation with me? I like putting it up front and then justifying why you should have a conversation with me. The other mistake I see people make all the time is they're like, let me pitch you a salesy type version of why you should talk because I can fill your funnel in 3 minutes in a way that you've never done before. I can reduce your speed to lead by an extra 15 minutes. Like these are all big promises that everyone makes. If it were true, you probably wouldn't be reaching out to me in the way that you're reaching out to me, to be quite honest. Right? There's an inherent irony in people making that kind of a pitch and doing cold email. I
Right.
prefer saying something to the effect of, here's the context. I'm Yash. I run education and content here at Clay. We're trying to do this thing. I want to talk to more people who are on the cutting edge of doing that thing. Based on the stuff I've read about you, based on who I know you to be, you're a leader and a visionary who's thinking at the cutting edge of go-to-market systems. I just want your feedback. right? I want like a genuine chat with somebody else who's thinking about these problems in a really in-depth way. Here's what I can promise you in return. That's the other part of the email, right? I've talked to a bunch of other industry leaders at large companies like Intercom. I'm talking to a few other ones I can't name in this email for you, but I can share those insights in one space. Are you down to have a chat to just think about the future of AI and GTM? And then I even sometimes the bonus step level is like adding the PS at the end with a little bit of a value add. One of my favorites is here's an article or a podcast I think you might like based on some of the stuff I've seen on your LinkedIn profile.
100%. Yeah, like that. The point form is also great. Yeah, the way you capitalize some parts and made it a bit less structured, the way you write is pretty cool. It's not like professional and cold like most emails that we are seeing out there. And yeah, the last little bit here, flexible around your schedule, that's pretty fun. Can we see like the full prompt for that full email? Like, yeah, what consisted the full final email?
Yeah, so that's part of what I mean when I say AI snippets, right? Like there is no full prompt making the full email.
Right.
All that's happening here is we're taking different parts of a templated structure. So let
Yeah,
me first read what the template is here. What's happening, and if you want to see it here live in this column,
there you
is
go.
we're saying hi first name. Then we're just taking the result of the AI prompt from the mission statement. Also noticed AI prompt on the customers.
Yeah.
This is all templated otherwise. And then I put the ICP formatted in here. But this is the power of a really good template. A really good template with the right snippets personalized doesn't feel like a template. And I think the big mistake I see people making all the time is they're like, I just want AI to write the whole email for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just honestly lazy.
Yeah,
What you need
it
to do
is.
is be rigorous about what you want written and then have AI personalize just the right bits for you.
And why isn't Clay making this template of yours available or selling it? Because that would look valuable to me.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we are actually just trying to make more templates available to everyone so that the answer is we're working on it. I think given that we're a small team for how far we've come along, like we're about 40 people, which I think surprises people all the time, rapidly growing. But uh, we focus time more on like, let's build new product innovation and functionality than we do like all the small bits and details. But we do have someone as of last week working on making more of the AI formula presets, Google presets, formula presets, all up and running. We also have shared tables up and running and a whole website page for that. The dream for us one day, we're not here yet, is to just enable a whole ecosystem of people earning money on their creative licenses to these types of things.
Right.
And we actually just don't care about doing that. In fact, I don't want us to be the shepherds of doing that. I want people like you, people like Alex Vaca on LinkedIn, Michelle Leibman from Cold IQ, Jacob Tewiner. I want those people to be the ones who are sharing their expertise and then monetizing that as well. Because if they can then share a shared table, share their specific prompt, their custom version of what they want to do, and then you want to go use that table, like you could do it on Gumroad. Pay them $20. Let them keep all of it. Uh, we think that like ecosystem has a lot of potential because you can share knowledge, gain knowledge, and build things much more quickly.
Yeah, very cool vision. Um, how would you stimulate these folks to do that? Just keep on sharing, building that community, that positive space, and incentivize them to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the PLG process for us really speaks for itself. I think Bruno, who's our head of growth marketing, recently wrote a piece on this that I think is beautiful about how Clay is growing, which is such a rare question to answer. I think a lot of companies explode over a short period of time, and very rarely do you get the detailed, in-depth look at what is leading to that growth. Bruno wrote a great piece on it, so I won't summarize the whole piece here. But the one part he mentioned that I think is really important to this equation is that people feel a sense of ownership over the things that they build in Clay. It's really like a blank canvas when you come in here. It's sort of like when you make a really cool spreadsheet, if you're really familiar with spreadsheets, or you code a really cool game or software. The first thing you want to do when you do that is show your friends. Like, hey, do you want to play this really cool game that I made? That's very much about the power of programming that I think we're bringing to people in Clay. It's the same feeling. People build these really complex Clay tables, one to solve their own problems and needs. So there's a direct reason for it already. But then once they do that, they have the sense of ownership and pride that leads them to go post on LinkedIn and scream from the rooftops, "Hey, look at what I built in Clay! Isn't this amazing?" Uh, and also, the last piece of it is it has a direct benefit to them as a business because those people have been going viral already on all these types of posts because the things they've been able to do in Clay bewilder even us. Uh, and so then they have clients signing up for their consulting services, for their agencies. And so we'll eventually just add more reward incentives to that loop, but they're continuing to benefit plenty from it already.
What could be other use cases for Clay? Last time we spoke about data cleaning. And how much features do you have on the roadmap for that?
Yeah, I think there's like nothing on the roadmap specifically for data cleaning, but I think what you're really talking about is like, what are all the things you can do in Clay? And I think to that point, without diving too much into all the specifics, let me name all the things that I think are most unique to what Clay can do. So I would actually say LinkedIn prospecting, one of the least unique parts of Clay. Everyone is built on top of LinkedIn. ZoomInfo, Cognizant, Lusha, LinkedIn is the backbone of the infrastructure for all those companies. This is just us playing table stakes with those companies. Where Clay becomes really interesting and powerful for a lot of users is I can now go look up all of the dentist's offices for a company selling dental office technology in New York in a certain radius, scrape that, bring it into a page. I can, if I want to, find the yellow pages, not my history, yellow pages scraper from Appify and bring in a bunch of small business yellow pages data into Clay using the scraper by integrating with Appify right here. I could pull an RSS feed by setting up a Google alert for any specific custom set of terms that I want a new row of data pinged in. And now I can get news alerts about specific companies into a specific table in Clay. I can hook up a Typeform. I can do all sorts of things. And then what you were asking about, the data cleaning part, is really twofold, right? One, it's that we have this AI web scraper called Claygen that has access to the web and, like a rock star new intern or new employee, shows its work. My favorite part about Claygen is that it's not a total black box. When I use Claygen, not only does it give me the result I want, it gives me the reason for that result, it gives me the confidence in that result, and it shows all the work that it did. So that now when I go back to redo my prompt when I got the wrong answer, I have that much more information for saying, okay, well, this is why I got the wrong result. It searched Google for this. I want it to always search Google for this. Or I always want it to go to this as the second result. Or I always want it to match on the company name. All of those steps make your iterative prompting process a lot easier. And then the last piece I'll mention here, and is probably one of the most underrated value adds in Clay, is the fact that I can use AI to generate a message or a formula instantly, right? So here, all I did was I concatenated the following, and this is totally free. We don't charge people for the AI runs that we run here. I can use this to clean data in exactly the format that you're just mentioning, Charles, all over the place. I can use it to add text together. I can also use it to create as advanced or complex a lead scoring formula as I want. We have a lead scoring formula that I'll actually show you guys real quick in the Clay team table. It's a monster of a formula. It gets updated probably every week uh, because we're constantly iterating on what we're doing from the lead scoring side. I'll try and quickly, yeah, I picked the one that doesn't have the data, so we're not ruining any customer privacy issues, but I think we should still have the fit here. Look at that, right? The values are a little bit off because I don't want to show you guys the customer data. But if the agency is yes, then return agency. If the email is false, then go PLG. If it's between this headcount, return uncertain. If it's not, do this. This is a lot of complex code that I would have to write otherwise. I don't want to sit down and code all day. It took me 5 minutes to write this and then have it be translated to the right formula in AI. And I think these are the types of capabilities that people are justifiably intimidated by sometimes. It's like, oh, I want to use all the things in Clay. How do I use it? And that's where I would come back to my primary advice of first figure out what you want to do manually and what you want to scale. Once you figure that out, then we can talk about automating it all day. But if we sit down and don't know where we want to start, the conversation gets a lot more difficult.
And couldn't ChatGPT or a Copilot help doing that? Or what? From what I understand, Clay came up with its own programming, well, its own no-code programming language.
No, so this is actually, I mean, you're sort of right that we built this on top of ChatGPT, but this is totally run by ChatGPT, right? Like it's powered by ChatGPT on the back end, but it's ChatGPT layered on with a bunch of our own custom stuff. So yeah, you could call it our own proprietary piece if you wanted to, but
It's very cool. Yeah, so much potential, so much talent in the team. It's really exciting. Thanks for sharing all this valuable knowledge with us today. Yash, where can people find out more about you?
yeah, thanks for hopping on the call with me, Charles. I think people can find out more about me on Twitter or on LinkedIn if they want. I'm on LinkedIn, just Yash Tekriwal as my full name. And then if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm Tech Help.